Hi, my name is Apple Sashi and welcome to A is for Art History. Today we'll be discussing Haussmannisation and its impact on how artists represent the city of Paris. Artists responded to Paris through social commentary and criticism of Haussmannisation. The renovation of Paris was a vast public works programme commissioned by Napoleon III and completed by Baron Haussmann. Paris became a building site for nearly 20 years, displacing 350,000 people from the city and creating what Lazare describes as two cities, the city of luxury surrounded, besieged by the city of misery. Haussmann's distinct architecture opened up the streets of Paris, building new avenues such as the Rue de Rivoli with its arcades. He also designed new parks such as the Bois de Boulogne and the Le Parc Monceau, as well as sewers, lighting and municipal buildings such as Les Halles Centrales. Haussmann famously declared that his aim was to tear open the old Paris, the district of riots and barricades, by a wide central thoroughfare that would pierce this almost impenetrable labyrinth from one side to the other. Essentially, Paris was a city in transition, and many artists responded to this change in different ways. In The Old Musician, 1862, Manet paints a social commentary on the displaced victims of Haussmannisation. The photographs of Aget, such as Le Monet, quai, Conti, 1900, and Notre-dame, quai de Montebello, 1922, subliminally criticizes New Paris through its praise and focus on the features of Old Paris. Caillebotte's Paris Street Rainy Day 1877 reveals the isolating experience that stems from the ruthlessness of Haussmannisation, with a focus on the middle-class perspective. In The Old Musician 1862, Manet paints the working class, more specifically those displaced by Haussmannisation. The Old Musician is placed slightly off-centre, rendered with a greying beard and brown clothes that are rugged and falling apart at the ends. This male figure was modelled after Jean Lagreen, who lived close to Manet's studio in a temporary camp. He had been harassed by the police and hurt his arm working as a construction worker on Haussmann's projects. This figure highlights the lack of social welfare that was available for Haussmann's workers. 1 in 5 Parisian workers were employed in the building trade, and thus illustrates the negative impact of the renovation of Paris. The surrounding figures also emphasize the vast variety of people displaced. For example, a young mother modelled from a slum child in Petit Pologne. Children, the boy in the white is modelled after Giles or Perrault clowns from Troubadours, and the Bohemian. Manet illuminates the unwelcoming nature of Haussmann's Paris, which only accommodates the middle and upper classes. Furthermore, the similarity in height of the figures indicates a lack of hierarchy. They have all been equally burdened by the renovation of Paris. The scene is located in Bâtonneuil, a village that was annexed into Paris in 1861. The hills were levelled to extend the railway and built from stone bought cheaply from demolitions elsewhere in the city. As the centre of Paris was being redesigned, the Bâtonneuils became home to the displaced. Manet had lived in the Bâtonneuil quarters from 1860 to 1864, and therefore was very aware of the working class conditions. Manet was also a Republican with an interest in suffrage for working class men, and this painting sympathetically reflects those views. This painting acts as a critical commentary on the treatment of the displaced, and thus acts as a critique on Haussmann's renovation of Paris. Aget was a pioneer of documentary photography. He moved to Paris in 1878 and continued living there until his death in 1927. Aget often chose to take photographs of urban environments of Paris, with a particular interest in Old Paris, completing a series of photos titled The Old Paris Collection in 1927. Through his focus and idealization of Old Paris, one could argue that Aget simultaneously critiques the new renovated Paris created by Haussmann. In La Monnaie, quai, Conti, 1900, Aget captures a door knocker made to look like the head of a lion. Aget photographed this lion-shaped knocker at the Mint, a building that epitomizes the official Louis XVI style of Old Paris. This photo was part of his project to document Old Paris, declaring the subject to be completely beautiful. Other than being aesthetically drawn to the subject matter, Aget also had a practical reason for photographing in such crisp detail. He sold many of these photographs to metal workers who used them to produce bronze replicas, and thus by selling these works, he was encouraging the reproduction of Old Paris. The photograph is taken at an angle, suggesting that the door is opening, perhaps to reveal the idealized Old Paris within. Another example of Aget's depiction of Old Paris is Notre-dame, quai de Montebello, 1922. This photo shows Notre-Dame framed by skeletal trees fading into the fog. This ghostly apparition creates an eerie atmosphere, suggesting a feeling of nostalgia for the dying Old Paris. This atmosphere is furthered by the use of vignette, a typical feature of Aget's work. Furthermore, the distance from Notre-Dame across the scene highlights the photographer's reverence for medieval Parisian architecture. By putting Notre-Dame's Gothic buttresses in the same image as the tree's skeletal branches, Aget directly compares the man-made and nature in an urban setting. This is a link Aget contemplated in many of his later works. Through his photographic glass negatives, Aget glorifies the beautiful civil architecture from the 16th to 19th century, and, by extension, criticizes the harshness and monotonous uniformity of Haussmann's Paris. In Paris Street, Rainy Day, 1877, Caillebotte contemplates the isolation felt as a result of Haussmannisation. The oil painting depicts unambiguously middle-class individuals walking through the Place de Dublin. Groom describes the scene as a great picture of urban life. Caillebotte is painting modern Paris with wide boulevards that had recently been built, lined with modern apartment houses. The scene is well balanced, divided into quarters by the lamppost and street, mirroring the conformity of Haussmann's architecture. Caillebotte uses tight brushstrokes, creating a photographic effect. This emphasizes the formal, geometric, imposing architecture. Caillebotte's work is atypical to the sketchier brushwork of the Impressionist movement, taking place at the same time as him. Rather, the artist chooses to use a much more academic method, tracing guidelines from photographs, making diagrams for perspective, and completing multiple preparatory drawings. This painting style can be credited to his experience as a student to a realist. Like the surroundings, the figures are depicted with a lack of individuality, due to the uniformity of dress. Despite this unity, the figures are separated by empty space and a lack of physical interaction. Further, Hagen points out that the umbrellas shield them not just from the rain, but also, it seems, from the other passers-by, emphasizing the isolation was not only facilitated by New Paris, but seemingly encouraged. With the main figures off-center and a man cropped on the right, Caillebotte successfully captures a fleeting moment that accurately represents the new, renovated 19th century Paris. Haussmann's renovation of Paris was a significant change that greatly impacted the working and middle classes alike. Artists such as Manet, Aget, and Caillebotte reacted to this transition through their paintings and photographs, often using their art as a social commentary and/or criticism of Haussmannisation.